you needed to fill Lakeview, you have now eliminated that from being our school. So I would like to know, why are you changing your story? How can you justify buying another property, having a community that is 8% of your total in student enrollment, only 5% of your capacity? Why are we responsible for paying part of 2 schools and a complete third? And even at complete enrollment at build-out, we're still only 14%. 14%. Please give me an explanation on that.
I'd like to respond
Mhm.
to some of your comments. I was on the board, as was Serena, at the time that the 2003 conversations were held about the attendance of the students in your particular part of the district. At that time, Green Valley School was pretty well impacted. We weren't really able to accommodate more students in that school. Lakeview School had opened. We had the conversation with parents in the community, and I assume you probably were one of them at that time, that we had a school that was impacted and we would rather not put more students in there in the interest of not giving them the best educational opportunity. And we did have a brand new school across the district which could accommodate those students. We gave a choice. We did not give a mandate at that time. There was no direction that the students had to go there. In fact, they were allowed the choice to go to either Jackson, which had some room, or Lakeview, given whatever logistics worked best for the families. At that time, the expectation was clearly that those students would come back to Pleasant Grove Middle School when they completed 5th grade or 5th grade at Lakeview or Jackson. That was the expectation. At no time was it said that those students could not attend Pleasant Grove. That was the preferred statement of the district, was that the students come back. It was at the request of those families whose children were in school with other children who were going to be going to Marina, that they be allowed to follow along with their classmates and maintain their friendships in the interest of providing a good environment for students, happy families, content classroom circumstances. We allowed that pattern to happen.
But the boundary change was to Lakeview and Marina. And until 2010, which is when you were going to refinance at COP, you were not going to force us to move to Pleasant Grove. And then you went through this board, and you weren't here, Ken, but the rest of this board was here, and they went through and they told a room full of people, we get it, we're not going to touch you. The very next meeting, you went through, you changed our school from Marina to Pleasant Grove. You changed the web page to match whatever story you had come up with, which is how we ended up getting, we went back and said, show me your board meeting minutes, show us everything. And then that's how we got the letter from Dr. Bly saying, here's your history, oops, we made a mistake. So the boundary was moved from Lakeview to Marina.
I will admit that there were confusing directions in that time, but I will also say that the intention was never for that to be a permanent change. Dr. Bly was not superintendent at the time those decisions were made, and so the communication she had with you was historically based.
So I'm just saying the timing was fishy, and you wonder why we don't have a lot of trust. It's because at the same time that you did that COP is the same time when, after you told a room full of people, we're not going to touch you, you moved us to Pleasant Grove. That is the reason there is a lot of anger in Upper Serrano towards this district. It's because of that created a big issue. And then we find out later that same year, 10 years after the school was built, you decided that we should pay for building it. And then that happened till May, and then all of a sudden between May 11th and August, whenever you put the stuff up, all of a sudden it was now Lakeview and Pleasant Grove. But the COP says Pleasant Grove. And according to your own documents, Pleasant Grove cost 17 million, over 17 million, not 13 million.
Well, the additionals when the gym was built in at a later date, the initial construction costs were under 14 million. And then gym was delayed until later point, so that difference from
Okay,
13,
I'm just
so
going
you're
off of your
more-
own documents.
Exactly, well, I'm just making that clear. I wanted to interject a comment.
Yeah.
So I've been on the board since 2006, and while I do appreciate your comments and that, before I was on the board, I was a regular attendee at board meetings as well. And I can tell you this personally for myself as a board member, I have never made a vote conscious decision that we would change our boundaries as a policy to switch students to Marina Village. What we did, as Ellen stated, after we received a binder full of very emotional, tearful correspondence from families, was acknowledge the fact that we are dealing with students, we're dealing with children, and we want to do what's best for families. And so we allow those families to continue on in Marina Village. I can say with perfect honesty and a complete conviction that in our board conversations, we had many very heated board conversations in that those students should come back, those students should come back, and we've had this continued conversation since even Kim has been on the board. And what we recognized was it isn't that number of students that's so significant that it's going to lessen the fact that Marina is a very crowded school. So we thought about, well, do we pull these students from Marina Village and insist that they go on to Pleasant Grove, or do we abide by the family's request and let them stay on Marina Village? Because part of that decision was the incorrect feeling from people at that time, and I know that has changed now, the high school boundaries, but at that time, there were families that felt that if they went to Marina Village, they would be guaranteed a place in Oak Ridge. Now, the high school boundaries have since changed. That's neither here nor there to this board, but this board has always operated in good conscience, with intent. You may remember it differently in your mind. Myself, having sat through many years of meeting, having sat on the middle school task force, and having sat on this board, I, in good conscience, will say, I never voted that it would be a permanent, because we talked about it, and we said, we cannot in good conscience do this when we have one school that is suffering from being crowded, and another school that has classrooms ability to take these students and to offer them an equal opportunity for education. Because what we also look at when we're looking at it isn't just the finance portion, we're looking at what you heard earlier from Dave Scroggins, the curriculum and the quality of education that's offered to our students. And students who go to overcrowded, impacted schools suffer as well when they can't get into the classrooms or take the curriculum or have the amount of teacher attention that they need. So it's always been the desire and the policy of this board to balance our schools so that children have as many opportunities to access to education as possible. And I'm sorry, but I will disagree with you, and you can put it in the record as a board member now and as a member of the public before. It was never a permanent decision that those families and boundaries, and there is nothing that has been done behind doors. I'm sorry if you have that misinterpretation or that feeling because you haven't been at every single board meeting
Well,
for
I
the
will
last
tell
8 years.
you,
Excuse me,
Dave-
I'd like to finish my comments. You finish your comments. I'd like you to respect us as well. I'm just saying that personally as a board member, I have a clear conscience that what we have done has been in the best interest of students. And that Pleasant Grove was indeed built for those families because there is also an adjacent high school parcel. And all of the work that the middle school task force did at that time was to try to provide the best superior atmosphere for our students so that the middle school was there. The high school continues to own a piece of property there. They've owned it for now, I don't know, at least 10 or 12 years plus.
Forever.
And that correct? That was the goal in building Pleasant Grove Middle School, to always provide the best education for our students. So I'm sorry if it appears as if we are unduly punishing a certain number of families, but that is not the intent of this board. We are following the Mello-Roos obligations, which in fact were put on the homeowners such as yourself through the Development Corporation. We did what was asked of us in conjunction with the developer coming and saying, we don't want to pay these development fees up front. We don't want to build the facilities. We want to establish a Mello-Roos, and the school district at that time accepted that obligation as to continue to carry it out to the best of our ability.
So please explain to me why 8% of the community should have to pay for part of 2 schools plus an entire 3rd school.
Because we're allowing family choice. And so families, for instance, right now at Marina Village, who would be better served physically and in terms of space to be at Pleasant Grove. But again, by allowing parent choice, perhaps it seems as if we have done something shady, but it is just for that reason, and we have engaged in party conversation as a board, that the first thing in our minds, students are always first to us. So if that student feels and that parent feels they're better served by having their student at Marina Village, we aim to honor that obligation.
Okay, but I'm gonna go back to why is 8% of your student body responsible for paying part of 2 schools plus a complete third?
Well, and I'll disagree with you in the sense that, as I said earlier, and the reason I also asked Sid, that every single